I found out my wife was sleeping with my business partner on the same day I inherited $42 million. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in my truck outside Brandon Mitchell's condo at 11:30 on a Tuesday morning, watching my wife Emily's silver Lexus, the one I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary, parked in his assigned spot. She'd told me she had a dentist appointment. Brandon had texted our group chat that he was working from home with a migraine. Neither of them knew about the inheritance yet. My Uncle Raymond had passed 3 weeks ago, and his attorney, Patricia Lawson, had called me into her office that morning to discuss the estate. I'd expected maybe some old war medals and perhaps his vintage fishing gear. Instead, I walked out with documentation showing I was now the sole beneficiary of a commercial real estate portfolio worth more than I'd earned in 3 lifetimes. I'd left Patricia's office in a daze, driving aimlessly through downtown Portland, trying to process the information. That's when I'd spotted Emily's car turning into Brandon's complex. My hands had moved on autopilot, following her. Now I sat here, engine off, watching the third-floor window where I knew his bedroom was. I'd been to his place exactly twice. Once for a Super Bowl party, once to help him move a couch. Both times, Emily had complained about coming along. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Dentist running late. Might be another hour. Love you. I took a screenshot. Then another of Brandon's text from 20 minutes earlier. This migraine is killing me. Gonna be offline all day. 15 years of marriage. 6 years of partnership with Brandon in our construction business, Mitchell & Porter Contracting. We'd built that company from nothing, working 70-hour weeks, taking risks that kept me up at night. Emily had been there from the beginning, managing our books, helping us land our first major contracts through her family's connections. Her father, Robert Whitmore, owned half the commercial properties in Lake Oswego. He'd given us our start, introduced us to investors, vouched for us when banks wouldn't. When Emily and I got married, Robert had pulled me aside and told me I was family now, that the Whitmore name meant something, and I was carrying it forward. I wondered what Robert would think about his daughter's car spending 3 hours in another man's parking spot on a Tuesday morning. My phone rang. Patricia Lawson. David, I forgot to mention something, she said. Raymond's estate includes a 51% stake in Cascade Properties LLC. I'm sending over the details now, but you should know that one of their holdings is the Riverside Commercial Complex. I knew that complex. Brandon lived there. We'd actually bid on the renovation contract 2 years ago, but lost to a bigger firm. I own Brandon Mitchell's building? As of this morning, yes. Well, the estate does, but you're the sole beneficiary. The transfer should be complete within 60 days, pending probate. After we hung up, I sat there for another 20 minutes. A delivery truck came and went. A woman walked her dog. Life continued normally while mine was fragmenting into before and after. Emily emerged from the building at 1:15. Her hair was different, messier than when she'd left that morning. She'd reapplied her lipstick, but the color was slightly off. She checked her phone, smiled at something, then drove away. Brandon came out 10 minutes later, heading to his truck in gym clothes, looking perfectly healthy. No migraine. He was whistling. I drove to our office, a small building we'd purchased 3 years ago when business was booming. The receptionist, Amanda, looked surprised to see me. Mr. Porter, I thought you were at that meeting all day. Finished early. Is Kyle here? Kyle Brennan was our project manager, the first employee we'd hired. Loyal, competent, and honest to a fault. He's at the Sunset Ridge site. Tell him I need to see him tonight. My house, 7 o'clock. Don't mention it to Brandon. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Amanda was sharp. She'd probably already noticed things I'd been too blind to see. I spent the afternoon in my office with the door closed, reviewing documents Patricia had sent over. Uncle Raymond had been far more successful than any of us knew. The real estate portfolio was just the beginning. There were investment accounts, stocks, bonds, and a life insurance policy with me as the beneficiary. But more importantly, there were options. Leverage. Power I'd never had before. At 4:30, I texted Emily. Heading home early. Want to grab dinner out tonight? Just us? Her reply came fast. That sounds perfect. I'm exhausted from all that dental work. Nowhere too fancy? Dental work. I took another screenshot. At 5, I called an attorney Patricia had recommended, someone who specialized in business dissolution and family law. Jeremy Walsh's office was in downtown Portland, and he could see me first thing Wednesday morning. Bring everything, he said. Business documents, financial records, and anything related to your marriage. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, but documentation matters for asset division. What if I have proof of adultery? It won't affect the divorce itself, but it can impact other things. Bring it all. Emily was home when I arrived, wearing yoga pants and one of my old college sweatshirts. She looked beautiful and comfortable and completely at ease. She kissed me like she always did, asked about my day like she always did, suggested Thai food for dinner like we'd done 100 times before. I smiled and agreed, and hated how easy it was for her to lie. Over pad thai and spring rolls, she told me about her dentist appointment, a root canal that had taken forever, the hygienist who wouldn't stop talking, how her jaw still ached. The details flowed smoothly, practiced. This wasn't her first time. How's Brandon doing? I asked casually. Brandon? I don't know. Why? He texted that he had a migraine, thought maybe you'd heard from him. She shook her head. Poor guy. Those migraines of his are brutal. The IT department's email came through at 9:47 on a Thursday morning, 2 days after I'd met with Jeremy Walsh. Subject: Security alert. Account access review required. I opened it at my desk, half listening to Amanda chatting with a supplier on the phone in the outer office. Dear Mr. Porter, our routine security audit has detected unusual access patterns on your corporate email account. Specifically, your account was accessed from your home IP address on the following dates when our VPN logs show you were connected from remote locations. March 15th, 2:47 p.m. You were logged in from Dallas, TX. April 3rd, 11:23 a.m. You were logged in from Seattle, WA. April 18th, 3:15 p.m. You were logged in from Phoenix, AZ. Please contact it immediately to verify whether these access instances were authorized. I sat back in my chair, reading it twice more. March 15th. I'd been in Dallas meeting with a hotel developer about their lobby renovation. April 3rd, Seattle. That supplier meeting that ran long. April 18th, Phoenix. Touring that resort property with Brandon. Except Brandon had called in sick that day. I'd gone alone. My home IP address. Emily had access to my laptop at home, knew my passwords. We'd always been casual about that kind of thing. 15 years of marriage, joint accounts, shared devices. No secrets. Or so I'd thought. I pulled up my calendar, cross-referencing the dates. Each one corresponded to a business trip where my schedule had changed unexpectedly. The Dallas trip had extended an extra day when the client wanted a second meeting. Seattle, the supplier had rescheduled twice. Phoenix, I'd ended up staying overnight when my original afternoon flight got canceled. Emily had been checking my email, looking for my itinerary, my travel plans, my schedule changes. Planning her time with Brandon. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then called down to IT. Hey, David, Jerry Paulson answered. He'd set up our network 6 years ago when we'd moved into this office. Got your email alert? Just read it. Those access times, can you tell me what was accessed? Which emails were opened? Hold on. Keyboard clicking in the background. Okay, looking at the logs now. March 15th, whoever it was, opened your calendar, checked your sent mail folder, and accessed 3 emails from the Marriott in Dallas. Confirmation numbers, checkout date, that kind of thing. April 3rd? Calendar again, your inbox, filtered for emails from Alaska Airlines and the Sheraton Seattle. April 18th? Same pattern. Calendar, then searched your email for Phoenix and flight. Opened 6 messages total, all travel-related. She'd been systematic about it, checking when I'd be gone, when I'd be back, whether my plans had changed. Jerry, can you pull all instances of access from that IP address? Not just the ones that conflicted with my remote logins. Every time. Sure thing. Give me about 20 minutes. Send it to my personal email. And Jerry, don't mention this to anyone, not even Amanda. Understood. I hung up and stared at my computer screen. The corporate email system we'd set up when Brandon and I formalized the business. Emily managed the books, had legitimate access to company finances, payroll, accounts receivable. She'd insisted on having access to my email too, said it made sense for continuity if I was unreachable on a job site. I'd never questioned it. My phone buzzed. Kyle Brennan, calling from the Hawthorne Project. We've got the inspector here, he said. Wants to talk about the load-bearing modifications. Be there in 30 minutes. I needed to move, to do something normal. The walls of my office felt too close. The Hawthorne Project was a gut renovation of a 1920s building we were converting into mixed-use retail and apartments. I spent 2 hours with the inspector, walking through framing modifications, discussing beam specifications, reviewing engineering reports. The familiar rhythm of construction talk, problem-solving, building something solid and real. When I got back to the office at 1:15, Jerry's email was waiting. The attachment showed 43 separate instances of access from my home IP address over the past 6 months. 43 times Emily had logged into my corporate email. I scrolled through the list. Most clustered around my business trips, but not all. Some were random weekday afternoons. Some were evenings when I'd been at the office late, working on bids. Jerry had included details on what she'd accessed each time. My calendar, always. Travel confirmations. Meeting schedules. Client emails discussing project timelines. But also, emails with Brandon about project assignments, discussing which jobs we'd each oversee. Messages about client meetings, who would attend, who would stay back at the office. She'd been mapping our movements, making sure she knew when Brandon and I would be apart. On March 22nd, she'd accessed an email thread between Brandon and me about the Riverside renovation bid, the project we'd submitted 2 years ago, the one that would have given us the contract to renovate his building. The building I now owned. She'd opened that email at 2:30 in the afternoon. According to my calendar, I'd been at a job site in Beaverton. Brandon's calendar, which synced to the company system, showed him in a client meeting downtown. Except I'd driven past Brandon's condo that afternoon, heading back from Beaverton. His truck had been in his assigned spot. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Assumed his meeting had canceled, that he'd gone home early. Now I pulled up the email thread she'd accessed. Brandon and I discussing the Riverside project, our frustration at losing the bid, speculation about who'd underbid us. The property owner's name hadn't been listed in the public documents. Had Emily known even then that Uncle Raymond owned it? Had she been checking to see if I'd made the connection? My phone rang. Emily. Hey, I answered. Hi, just confirming. You'll be home at the normal time tonight? Should be. Why? No reason, just planning dinner. I thought I'd make that pasta thing you like. Her voice was bright, cheerful. The voice of a woman planning a nice evening with her husband. Sounds good. I've got a few things to wrap up here, but I should be home by 6:30. Perfect. Love you. Love you too. I ended the call and immediately texted Kyle. Need you to cover something for me tonight. Tell anyone who asks that I'm meeting with the cement supplier about the Hawthorne Foundation work. Meeting running late, probably until 8 or 9. His response came quickly. No problem. Everything okay? Yeah, just need some flexibility tonight. I opened a new browser window and logged into our home security system. We'd installed cameras 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. Front door, back door, garage, driveway. I'd never thought to check them before. The system kept footage for 90 days. I scrolled back to March 15th, the first date on Jerry's list. 2:47 p.m. I watched Emily's Lexus pull out of our driveway, heading east toward town. Toward Brandon's condo. I fast-forwarded. She returned at 6:12, pulling back into the garage. 3.5 hours. April 3rd. She left at 11:05 a.m., returned at 4:30. 5 hours and 25 minutes. April 18th. Left at 2:55 p.m., back at 7:40. Almost 5 hours. I checked the dates against Brandon's calendar, the ones synced to our company system. March 15th. Blocked out as personal appointment. April 3rd. Sick day. April 18th. Dentist. Every absence coordinated, every lie synchronized. I downloaded the security footage for all 43 dates Jerry had identified, saving each file to an encrypted folder on my personal laptop. Then I went back further, checking random dates when I'd been traveling. January 24th. I'd been in Sacramento for 3 days, meeting with a developer about a strip mall renovation. Emily's car left our driveway at 10:15 a.m., returned at 3:40 p.m. February 9th. San Francisco, touring a historic building restoration project. Her car left at 1:30, back at 6:20. February 27th. Eugene, Oregon, consulting on a university building expansion. She left at 11, returned at 5:15. How long had this been going on? I checked further back, before Jerry's email access logs began. November, October, September. There. September 12th, 6 months ago. I'd been in Spokane for 2 days. Her Lexus left at noon, returned at 5:30. I sat in my office watching my wife's car pull out of our driveway over and over again on my computer screen. Each departure timed to my absence. Each return calculated to seem normal, unremarkable. The pasta dinner she was planning. The cheerful phone call. The love you that rolled off her tongue like truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Jeremy Walsh, following up on our meeting. Let me know when you're ready to proceed. No rush, but the documentation you have is time-sensitive. I looked at the files on my laptop. Email access logs showing 43 instances of surveillance. Security footage showing months of coordinated departures. Screenshots of lies about dentists and migraines. And underneath it all, the inheritance Emily didn't know about yet. The $42 million that changed every calculation, every equation of our marriage and our business. I texted Jeremy back, "Can you meet tomorrow morning? 8 a.m.? I'll be there." I had one more stop to make before going home to eat pasta and pretend everything was normal. The IT department's findings sat in my inbox like a loaded gun. 43 unauthorized access attempts over 6 months. Every single one from my home IP address. Every single one on dates when I'd been out of town. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then to Jeremy Walsh with a single line. Adding to the file. His response came back in under a minute. Excellent. See you tomorrow at 2. I closed my laptop and checked the time. 6:15. Emily would be expecting me home soon, probably already starting dinner, acting like everything was normal. Like she hadn't spent the afternoon in Brandon's bed. Like she hadn't been systematically monitoring my email for half a year to coordinate her affair. The IT audit had been routine. We ran them quarterly, standard security protocol for a company our size. Phil Granger, our IT contractor, had flagged the anomaly during his usual sweep. He'd called me directly, concerned about a potential security breach. Looks like someone's been accessing your corporate account from an external location, he'd said. Your home network, actually. But on dates when our records show you were traveling for business. Thought you should know. I'd thanked him, told him I'd look into it, asked him to send me the full report. The report was thorough. Dates, times, IP addresses, what she'd accessed. She'd been careful not to touch anything financial, nothing that would trigger automatic alerts. Just my calendar, my travel schedule, my meeting confirmations and flight itineraries. Planning her windows of opportunity. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, engine off, watching the last of the staff leave for the day. Amanda waved as she passed. I waved back. My phone buzzed. Emily. Pot roast in the oven. Should be ready by 7. Drive safe. I stared at the message. Pot roast. One of my favorites. She'd probably been planning it all day, between her afternoon activities and whatever errands she'd actually run. The perfect wife, making the perfect dinner, maintaining the perfect lie. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled up the IT report again, scrolling through the dates. February 3rd, February 18th, March 2nd, March 21st, April 5th. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. She'd check my schedule, find a trip, and make her plans accordingly. The earliest access was November 9th, 6 months ago. That lined up with the security footage from our house, the first instance Kyle had found of her leaving during one of my trips. 6 months of systematic deception. 6 months of checking my email to make sure the coast was clear. 6 months of driving to Brandon's condo while I was in Seattle or Sacramento or San Francisco, closing deals and building the business that supported our life. The business her father had helped us launch. The business where she managed the books, where she had legitimate access to almost everything except my personal email account. She'd needed my travel schedule, though. Needed to know exactly when I'd be gone, when she could slip away without risk. The company calendar wasn't detailed enough. She needed my actual itinerary, my flight times, my hotel confirmations. So she'd figured out my email password. I wondered how long that had taken. Whether she'd guessed it, or watched me type it, or tried combinations until something worked. Whether she'd felt guilty that first time, logging into my account from our home computer, or whether it had been easy. My password was the street name of the first house we'd bought together, and Emily's birth year. Oakmont, 1985. Not particularly creative, but I'd never imagined I needed to protect my email from my wife. I pulled out of the parking lot at 6:30, didn't head home. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Jeremy Walsh's office, a place I'd never been before, where no one would recognize me. I ordered black coffee and sat in the back corner, laptop open, and started going through the IT report line by line. Phil had included not just the access dates, but the specific emails Emily had opened. Every calendar invitation, every flight confirmation, every hotel reservation. She'd been meticulous. Never stayed logged in long enough to trigger a session alert. Never accessed anything beyond my schedule. Never left a digital footprint except the one Phil had found during his security sweep. If he hadn't been looking, I never would have known. I created a new document, cross-referencing the email access dates with the security footage dates Kyle had compiled. They matched perfectly. Every time she checked my schedule, she found a trip. Every trip, she left the house. 43 email accesses. 43 trips over 6 months. I hadn't traveled that much, so some of the accesses must have been her checking for future trips, planning ahead. I pulled up my sent folder, looking at the emails she'd read. A confirmation for a 3-day trip to Portland last month. Wait, no, we lived in Portland. A trip to Eugene. She'd opened it the day I sent it, 3 weeks before the actual trip. Another one. Seattle, 4 days, mid-March. She'd accessed it within hours of the calendar invitation hitting my inbox. She'd been eager, efficient, treating my business travel like her personal vacation schedule. My coffee had gone cold. I checked the time. 7:20. Emily had probably tried calling. I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls. 2 texts. Dinner's ready whenever you get home. Everything okay? I typed back. Stuck at the office. Ate something earlier. Don't wait up. Her response came immediately. Okay, love you. 2 words that meant nothing. 2 words she'd probably texted Brandon this afternoon, lying in his bed, my business partner who'd called in sick with a migraine that didn't exist. I wondered if they laughed about it, about how easy it was, how trusting I'd been, how convenient my travel schedule was for their arrangement. The IT report had timestamps. Most of Emily's accesses happened in the evening, between 8 and 10 p.m., after dinner. After I'd gone to bed or was working late at the office, she'd sit at her laptop in the living room or the home office, ostensibly managing the company books or paying bills, and check my email for upcoming trips. A few accesses were during the day, lunch hours, times when she could claim she was running errands or meeting a friend. I saved everything to my encrypted cloud drive, the IT report, my cross-reference document, the timeline I was building. Every piece of evidence, organized and dated, building towards something I hadn't fully articulated yet but could feel taking shape. Jeremy Walsh would know what to do with it. He'd mentioned tomorrow that documentation was everything in cases like this. That the more evidence I had, the stronger my position. I was building an airtight case. Not just proof of adultery, but proof of deception, of systematic planning, of using company resources and access to facilitate an affair. She'd compromised security protocols, used her position in the company to enable her betrayal. That would matter in the divorce. It would definitely matter in the business dissolution. I closed my laptop at 8:15 and sat in the coffee shop, watching people come and go. Couples on dates, students studying. A woman my age working on what looked like a presentation, her brow furrowed in concentration. Normal people doing normal things. None of them sitting in a coffee shop cataloging their wife's affair, documenting every lie, preparing to dismantle 15 years of marriage and 6 years of business partnership. My phone buzzed again. Not Emily this time. Kyle Brennan. Found something else in the footage. Call when you can. I stepped outside and dialed his number. What did you find? Went back further, Kyle said. Before November, checked October, September. There's activity in September. Just twice, but it's there. She left the house during your Denver trip, September 14th. 7 months. The affair had been going on for at least 7 months. Anything earlier? Still looking. August is clean so far, but I'm only halfway through. You want me to keep going? All the way back, I said. As far as the footage goes. That's 2 years of data. I know. Kyle was quiet for a moment. You got it. I'll have a full report by tomorrow afternoon. I thanked him and ended the call. Stood on the sidewalk in the cooling evening air, watching traffic pass, thinking about September. 7 months ago. What had been happening then? We'd landed the Whitmore Plaza renovation. Emily's father had recommended us for the job, a $2 million contract that had been our biggest project to date. Had the affair started before that? Had Emily already been sleeping with Brandon when her father handed us that contract? Or had the affair started after, a celebration of our success, a betrayal born from confidence instead of desperation? I didn't know. But I was going to find out. I got back in my truck at 8:30 and finally headed home. The IT report sat on my desk Thursday morning. 16 pages of login attempts, IP addresses, and timestamps. I'd asked for a routine security audit, something we'd been meaning to do anyway, and Greg Paulson from our contracted IT firm had delivered it yesterday afternoon. Emily had accessed my corporate email 43 times over 6 months. Every single instance from our home IP address. Every single instance on days when I'd been traveling for business. I scrolled through the timestamps on my laptop. February 14th, 9:20 p.m. I'd been in Seattle meeting with suppliers. March 2nd, 8:15 p.m. Boise, reviewing a strip mall project. March 19th, 10:05 p.m. Spokane, touring a potential acquisition. The pattern was unmistakable. She'd wait until evening, probably after confirming I'd checked into my hotel, then log into my email using credentials she must have watched me type 100 times. We'd never been secretive about passwords around each other. 15 years of marriage built trust. Or the illusion of it. Greg had flagged it automatically. The system tracked unusual access patterns. He'd called it a potential security breach, possibly credential theft. I'd thanked him and asked him to document everything, then told him I'd handle it internally. I opened one of the archived emails she'd accessed. A confirmation from Hilton for my stay in Sacramento, April 8th through 10th. I pulled out my phone and checked the home security footage Kyle had compiled. April 9th, 7:45 p.m. Emily's Lexus backing out of our driveway. She'd checked my schedule, verified I was 3 states away, then driven to Brandon's condo. My office phone rang. Amanda's voice came through the intercom. "David, your 9 o'clock is here." "Thanks, send him in." Kyle entered carrying a leather portfolio, his expression grim. He'd been working through the security footage for 3 days, cross-referencing it with my travel calendar and the IT report I'd shared with him yesterday. 2 years, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I went back as far as our current system allows. The affair has been going on for at least 2 years. I'd expected it, but hearing the confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. 2 years. Not 7 months. Not even a year. 2 full years of coordinated deception. "Show me." Kyle opened the portfolio and spread out printed screenshots, each labeled with dates and timestamps. "This is the earliest instance I found. May 16th, 2 years ago, 7:30 p.m. You were in Denver for the National Construction Expo." I remembered that trip. 3 days of vendor meetings and industry panels. Emily had encouraged me to go, said it would be good for business. She'd even helped me pack. "The IT logs only go back 6 months, Kyle continued. "But I pulled your travel records from the company calendar going back 2 years. Cross-referenced them with the security footage. She left the house on 87% of the nights you were traveling." 87%. I sat back in my chair, processing the number. Not every trip. That would have been too obvious, too risky. But most of them. Enough to establish a pattern. Enough to build a separate life. "There's something else," Kyle said. He pulled out another sheet. "I checked Brandon's sick days and vacation time against your travel schedule. For the past 2 years, he's called in sick or taken personal time on 63% of the days you've been out of town." The coordination was meticulous. When I traveled, Emily had her evenings free. Brandon arranged to be unavailable for work the next day, probably staying up late with her, sleeping in at his condo while I sat through breakfast meetings hundreds of miles away. "The Whitmore Plaza contract," I said. "When did we get that?" Kyle didn't need to check his notes. 22 months ago, July. 2 months after the affair started. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Had Emily known about the project before we did? Had she mentioned it to Brandon, helped position us to submit a bid? Her father owned the building. She managed our books, knew our capacity, our pricing strategies. "Pull all the communications around that contract," I said. "Emails, meeting notes, everything. I want to know exactly how that deal came together." "You think she—" "I don't know what I think yet, but I want the information." Kyle nodded and made a note. "Jeremy Walsh called this morning. He wants to meet tomorrow afternoon if you're available. Said he's finished reviewing the preliminary documents. Tell him 3 o'clock works." After Kyle left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the security footage timestamps. 87%, 2 years, 43 email intrusions in just the past 6 months, probably more before that, from devices or systems we weren't tracking. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Don't forget we have dinner with Dad tonight, 7 at Ringside. Love you. Robert Whitmore." I'd been so focused on Emily and Brandon that I hadn't fully considered her father's role in all this. He'd given us our start, introduced us to the right people, opened doors that would have stayed closed to 2 contractors from working-class backgrounds. The Whitmore Plaza contract alone had been worth $2 million. What did he know? Was he aware his daughter was sleeping with my business partner while I traveled for work? Or was he another person they'd successfully deceived? I typed back, "See you there." The IT report included a feature I hadn't noticed on my first read-through. Greg had documented not just when Emily accessed my email, but which specific messages she'd opened. I scrolled through the list. Travel confirmations, hotel reservations, meeting schedules, calendar invitations. She'd been thorough, checking every detail of my trips, building a complete picture of my whereabouts. But she'd also opened other emails. Messages from Kyle about project timelines. Communications with our accountant about quarterly earnings. A thread with our insurance broker about updating our business liability coverage. She was monitoring more than just my travel schedule. She was tracking the business itself. I pulled up our company financials, the ones Emily managed. Everything appeared normal. Accounts balanced, invoices processed, payroll distributed on schedule. She was good at her job, always had been. But now I wondered what else she might be doing with that access. I called Jeremy Walsh directly, not wanting to wait until tomorrow. "David," he answered on the second ring, "I was just about to call you. I need you to recommend a forensic accountant, someone who can audit our business finances going back at least 2 years." A pause. "What are you looking for?" "I don't know yet, but my wife has been accessing my corporate email for months, tracking my travel schedule to coordinate her affair. She also manages our company books. I want to make sure that's all she's been managing. I'll send you 3 names by end of day. All of them have experience with business dissolution cases. They know what to look for. There's something else. The affair has been going on for at least 2 years, not 7 months. It started about 2 months before we landed a major contract from my father-in-law's company." Jeremy was quiet for a moment. "That's going to complicate the business dissolution. If there's any indication she influenced contract negotiations or shared proprietary information, that's what I need to find out." "Understood. I'll prioritize this. Can you still meet tomorrow at 3? "I'll be there." I ended the call and opened my email, scrolling back through 2 years of correspondence. How many of these messages had Emily read? How many business strategies had she potentially shared with Brandon? They were partners in deception. What else were they partnering on? My office door opened. Amanda leaned in, her expression apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but Brandon's here. He says he needs to talk to you about the Riverside project." The Riverside Commercial Complex. The building I now owned 51% of. The building where Brandon lived, where Emily had been visiting him for 2 years. "Send him in." Brandon walked into my office looking exactly like someone who'd been sleeping with my wife for 2 years and thought he'd gotten away with it. Relaxed, confident. He wore a polo shirt with our company logo, khakis, work boots that had never seen actual work. "Hey David, got a minute?" "Sure. What's on your mind?" He settled into the chair Kyle had vacated 20 minutes earlier. "I wanted to talk about the Riverside renovation timeline. The owner's been pushing for an accelerated schedule, and I think we might be able to accommodate if we shift some resources from the Beaverton project." The owner. Patricia Lawson had sent me the LLC documents 2 days ago. Cascade Properties, LLC owned the building. Uncle Raymond had held 51%. which meant I now held 51%. Brandon had no idea he was asking me to negotiate with myself. "What's the owner offering for the acceleration?" I asked. 10% premium on the contract price. It's a good deal, David. Easy money. Easy money. I thought about Emily accessing my email 43 times, about Brandon calling in sick 63% of the days I'd been traveling, about 2 years of coordinated deception. "Let me think about it," I said. "I'll need to review our capacity." "Sure, yeah. No rush." "Well, some rush. The owner wants an answer by next week." "I'll have one for you." After he left, I pulled up the Riverside renovation contract. We'd bid it 6 months ago before Uncle Raymond died, before I inherited his estate. The building needed significant work: updated electrical, new HVAC, facade restoration. We'd submitted a competitive bid, $850,000 over 9 months. Now Brandon wanted to compress the timeline for a 10% premium, an extra $85,000. Split between partners, that would be $42,500 each. I opened my email and composed a message to Patricia Lawson. "Patricia, I need information about Cascade Properties LLC and the Riverside Commercial Complex. Specifically, I need to understand my rights as majority stakeholder regarding current renovation contracts. Can we meet Monday morning?" Her response came back within 5 minutes. "Monday at 9 works. I'll have everything prepared." My phone buzzed again. Emily. "Picking up your dry cleaning. Need anything else before tonight?" I looked at the message, at the casual domesticity of it. The performance of a normal marriage. She'd probably stop at home, hang up my shirts, maybe start dinner prep before we left for ringside. The dutiful wife. The helpful partner, who'd been systematically monitoring my business communications and sleeping with my business partner for 2 years. "No, I'm good. See you at home." I had 4 hours before dinner with Robert Whitmore. 4 hours to decide how much to reveal, how much to keep hidden. Emily's father had given us our start, but he'd also raised a daughter who'd been lying to me for 2 years. I needed to understand where his loyalties would fall when everything came to light. Because it was coming to light. Not today, maybe not next week, but soon. I pulled up the forensic accountant recommendations Jeremy would be sending. 2 years of financial records to audit. 2 years of emails to review. 2 years of coordinated deception to unravel. The IT report sat on my desk, 16 pages of evidence. 43 intrusions. 87% of my travel nights. 2 full years. I took a screenshot of the summary page and saved it to the encrypted folder with everything else. The documentation was growing. The email logs sat on my desk like a smoking gun. 43 unauthorized accesses over 6 months, all from our home IP address, all on days when I'd been traveling for business. The IT department had flagged it during a routine security audit, and Amanda had brought me the report with the kind of careful discretion that told me she understood exactly what it meant. I'd asked her to close my office door on her way out. The pattern was meticulous. Emily had logged into my corporate email at odd hours, late evenings, early mornings, weekends. She'd been checking my calendar, my travel confirmations, my meeting schedules, planning her time with Brandon around my absences with the precision of a military operation. My phone buzzed. "Kyle. Security footage compilation ready. You want it on encrypted drive or company server?" "Encrypted drive. Bring it to my office." I pulled up the email log again, cross-referencing dates with my calendar. January 14th. She'd accessed my email at 11:47 p.m., checking my itinerary for the Seattle trip. I'd left the next morning at 6. February 3rd. Another late-night login at 10:23 p.m. I'd flown to San Francisco 2 days later for a 3-day conference. The spreadsheet Kyle had created sat open on my second monitor. 87% correlation between my business trips and Emily leaving the house. 63% correlation with Brandon's absences from work. But this email access log added a new dimension. This wasn't just opportunistic. This was premeditated, systematic surveillance of my schedule. I heard the knock I'd been expecting. "Come in." Kyle entered carrying a small black thumb drive. He closed the door behind him and set it on my desk. "Encrypted with the password we discussed," he said. "I also found something else you should see." He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, then turned it toward me. It showed a screenshot of our company's internal calendar system. "Brandon's been accessing your calendar too, not through email, through the shared company calendar." I pulled the access logs. "He's been checking your schedule an average of twice a week for the past 2 years." I stared at the screenshot. The dates highlighted in yellow showed a pattern identical to Emily's email accesses. "They were coordinating," I said. "Yeah, and there's more." Kyle swiped again. "I checked the logs for our client database. Emily's been running reports on our biggest contracts, pulling financial data, accessing bid information on projects Brandon wasn't assigned to." "When?" "Ongoing, as recent as last week." She pulled the complete financial breakdown on the Whitmore Plaza renovation. The project her father had awarded us. The $2 million contract that had come through right after the affair started. "What kind of information?" "Our profit margins, subcontractor costs, material pricing, labor allocation. Everything someone would need to understand exactly how much money we were making and where we were vulnerable on pricing." I sat back in my chair. Emily managed our books, so accessing financial data wasn't unusual. But pulling detailed reports on specific projects, especially ones her father had commissioned? "Can you tell if she exported any of this data?" Kyle nodded slowly. 17 exports to external drives over the past 18 months. I can't tell what was on the drives, but I can tell you the file sizes. Some of them were substantial, hundreds of megabytes. She was copying company data. That's what it looks like. I thought about Jeremy Walsh, my attorney. He'd need to see this. If Emily had been sharing proprietary business information, that added a whole new dimension to the divorce proceedings and to the business dissolution. "Make copies of everything," I said. "Access logs, export records, file sizes, dates, and times. I want a complete audit trail." "Already done. It's all on the drive." Kyle hesitated. "David, if she was sharing financial data with someone outside the company..." "I know." If Emily had been feeding information to her father, or to Brandon, or to anyone else, we weren't just looking at adultery. We were looking at corporate espionage, breach of fiduciary duty, possibly fraud. My phone buzzed again. Emily. "Don't forget we have dinner with Dad tonight. 7:30 at Westside Grill." I'd completely forgotten. Robert Whitmore's monthly dinner, the ritual we'd maintained since he'd given us our first major contract 6 years ago. "I'll be there." Kyle was watching me. "Everything okay?" "Dinner with the father-in-law tonight." His expression shifted. "You think he knows?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." After Kyle left, I spent an hour reviewing the encrypted files. The security footage compilation was damning. Time-stamped video of Emily's silver Lexus entering and leaving Brandon's parking garage, matched against my travel schedule and Brandon's work absences. Kyle had edited it down to a highlight reel that would take less than 10 minutes to watch, but told a story spanning 2 years. The email access logs showed a woman who'd been monitoring her husband's movements with the dedication of a private investigator. Every trip planned, every absence noted, every opportunity cataloged and exploited. And the financial data exports suggested something even more troubling. I called Jeremy Walsh. "David, I was just about to call you. I've been reviewing the documentation your employee sent over." There's more. I summarized what Kyle had found: the email accesses, the calendar surveillance, the financial data exports. Walsh was quiet for a moment. That changes things. If she's been sharing proprietary business information, we can pursue claims beyond just the divorce: corporate theft, breach of fiduciary duty. And if her father was involved, I'm having dinner with him tonight. Be careful what you say. Don't tip your hand, but pay attention. If Whitmore knows about the affair and has been receiving company information from your wife, this could extend well beyond a simple divorce. Understood. One more thing, Walsh said. I did some digging into the Whitmore Plaza contract. The timeline is interesting. Your company submitted a bid 2 years ago, February 2022. You were awarded the contract in March. According to the access logs your employee sent, your wife's first documented email access was February 8, 2022, 3 days before your company submitted that bid. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You think she was feeding him information? I think it's a possibility worth exploring. If your wife accessed your schedule and your company's financial data, then shared that information with her father before he awarded you a major contract, we're potentially looking at bid rigging, fraud, and a host of other legal issues. What do I need to do? Document everything. Record tonight's dinner if Oregon's a one-party consent state, which it is. Pay attention to what Whitmore says, how he acts. See if he knows about the affair. See if he mentions anything about company business, especially the Whitmore Plaza project. After I hung up, I sat staring at the email logs. February 8th, 2022. Emily had been checking my schedule, accessing our company files, and then 3 days later we'd submitted a bid that somehow undercut our two closest competitors by just enough to win the contract without leaving money on the table. Robert Whitmore had told me at the time that our bid was exactly what he was looking for. I'd thought it was a compliment to our estimating skills. Now I wondered if he'd known our numbers before we'd even submitted them. I checked my watch. 4:15. 3 hours until dinner. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app, making sure it was working properly. Then I forwarded the email access logs to my personal email account, along with Kyle's security footage compilation and the financial export data. My phone buzzed. Patricia Lawson, Uncle Raymond's estate attorney. Probate moving forward smoothly. Should have final asset transfer completed within 30 days. The Riverside property deed will be in your name by end of month. The building where Brandon lived, where he'd been sleeping with my wife for 2 years, in a condo he rented in a building my uncle had owned, in a property that was now mine. I typed back, "Thank you, keep me posted." At 6:30, I left the office. Amanda was still at her desk, and she looked up as I passed. "Have a good evening, David." "You too, Amanda." She knew where I was going. Everyone who'd worked with us for any length of time knew about the monthly dinners with Robert Whitmore. They were part of the company's origin story. The wealthy father-in-law who'd given 2 young contractors their big break. I wondered how much of that story was true, and how much had been manufactured. The drive to Lake Oswego took 40 minutes in evening traffic. Robert Whitmore's estate sat behind iron gates on 2 acres of manicured grounds, the kind of property that announced old money without needing to say a word. I'd been here dozens of times over the years, for holidays and family dinners, always as the son-in-law who'd married up. Tonight felt different. I parked next to Robert's Mercedes in the circular drive. The house was a sprawling colonial with white columns and black shutters, lights glowing warm in the windows. Emily's Lexus wasn't here. She'd texted at 6:30 that she was meeting a college friend for dinner in the Pearl District. I'd replied with a simple, "Have fun," and a heart emoji. Robert answered the door himself, dressed in slacks and a cashmere sweater. At 68, he still carried himself like the corporate attorney he'd been for 40 years before retiring. Silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of handshake that assessed you. David, good to see you. He stepped back to let me in. Come on through to the study. I've got a Macallan 18 that's been waiting for the right conversation. I followed him through the marble foyer, past the formal living room where Emily and I had opened Christmas presents, down the hallway lined with family photos. Emily at her college graduation, Emily and me on our wedding day, both of us so young and certain. Emily at 8 years old on a sailboat, grinning at the camera. The study was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal texts and first editions. Robert poured 2 glasses of scotch, handed me one, and settled into the chair behind his desk. I took the seat across from him, the position I'd occupied 6 years ago when I'd asked his permission to marry Emily, and again when Brandon and I had pitched him on our first major contract. You said you wanted to discuss something business-related. Robert sipped his scotch. I assume this is about the Riverside project Brandon mentioned? My hand tightened on the glass. Brandon mentioned it? Called me yesterday, said you two were looking at an accelerated timeline for the renovation, wanted to know if I had any contacts at the Planning Commission who could expedite permits. Robert studied me over the rim of his glass. He seemed to think it was your idea. I took a drink, letting the scotch burn down my throat while I processed this. Brandon was already working angles, using Robert's connections to smooth the way for a project that would benefit him directly. The building I now owned, the condo where he'd been sleeping with my wife. Actually, I said, I wanted to talk to you about something else, about Emily. Robert's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Go on. How well do you know Brandon? Outside of business, I mean. I've met him at your company events. Seems competent enough. Why? I set my glass on the desk. Because I need to know if you're aware that he and Emily have been having an affair for at least 2 years. The silence stretched. Robert didn't move, didn't blink. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd created, and slid it across the desk. Security footage from Brandon's building. Emily's car in his assigned parking spot while I was out of town. Text messages claiming she was at the dentist, at the gym, meeting friends. The IT audit showing she accessed my corporate email 43 times in 6 months to track my travel schedule. Robert picked up the phone, his face unreadable as he scrolled through the images. The timestamp from last Tuesday, the footage from 2 years ago. Emily walking into Brandon's building at 1:15 in the afternoon, not leaving until 5:30. Jesus Christ! He set the phone down and reached for his scotch, draining half the glass. You're certain? Completely. And you came to me because I need to know what else has been going on. I leaned forward. Emily had access to our company's financial records. She exported data 17 times over 18 months. Detailed information on contracts, bids, profit margins. Her first documented access to my email was February 8th, 2022. 3 days later, we submitted our bid for the Whitmore Plaza renovation. Robert's jaw tightened. You think she shared proprietary information? I think she had access to everything we were planning to bid on your project. I think she knew our numbers before we submitted them. And I need to know if you were aware of that. I wasn't. His voice was hard. I selected your company because you did good work, because I trusted you. If Emily was feeding me information, I'm not saying she did. I'm saying she could have. And I need to understand the scope of what I'm dealing with before I move forward. Robert stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkened grounds. What are you planning to do? File for divorce. Dissolve the business partnership. But first I need to know if there's potential fraud involved. If Emily shared confidential bid information with you or anyone else, that changes everything. She didn't share anything with me. Robert turned back to face me. I swear to you, David, I had no knowledge of an affair, no advance information on your bids. The Whitmore Plaza contract went to you because you submitted the best proposal at a competitive price. I believed him. The anger in his voice was genuine, the kind of fury that came from being implicated in something dirty. Robert Whitmore had spent 40 years building a reputation for integrity. He wouldn't risk it for a $2 million contract. What about Brandon? I asked. Has Emily ever discussed our business with him in your presence? I've barely seen them in the same room. Robert returned to his chair. The only time I remember them talking was at your 4th of July party 3 years ago, and that was just pleasantries. 3 years ago, before the affair started, based on the earliest security footage. Or maybe it had started earlier than that, before cameras were installed, before digital trails existed. There's something else you should know, Robert said. About 2 months ago, Emily asked me about setting up a trust. Said she wanted to protect some assets, plan for the future. I told her to talk to Patricia Lawson. She handles estate planning for several of my former clients. My stomach went cold. Did she say what assets? No. I assumed it was standard financial planning. Now I'm wondering if she was preparing for something. A trust. 2 months ago, right around when Uncle Raymond had died, though Emily wouldn't have known about the inheritance. Unless she'd been planning to leave me anyway. Unless she and Brandon had been discussing a future together, making arrangements. Did she follow up with Patricia? I asked. I don't know. You'd have to ask her directly. I made a mental note to call Patricia tomorrow. If Emily had been setting up a trust, there would be records, documentation, a paper trail showing intent. Robert refilled both our glasses. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you planning to use this against Emily in a way that would damage her permanently? I'm planning to protect myself and my business. Whatever damage comes to Emily is a consequence of her own choices. She's still my daughter. And she's still my wife. That didn't stop her from sleeping with my business partner for 2 years while accessing confidential company information. I met his eyes. I'm not trying to destroy her, Robert. But I'm not going to let her walk away from this with half of everything I've built while she and Brandon continue on like nothing happened. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. What do you need from me? The truth about the Whitmore Plaza contract. A written statement that you received no advance information from Emily, that the bidding process was clean. And if you hear anything from Emily, from Brandon, from anyone about them planning next moves, I need to know. You'll have the statement by tomorrow afternoon. Robert stood and extended his hand. I'm sorry, David. If I'd known what she was doing, you couldn't have known. She's been very careful. I shook his hand. There's one more thing. When this comes out, Emily's going to come to you for help, financial support, legal connections, a place to stay. I can't tell you what to do, but I need you to understand that anything you give her could be used against me in the divorce. Understood. His grip tightened. For what it's worth, you've always been a good husband to her. Better than she deserved, apparently. I left the estate at 8:40, driving back toward Portland with Robert's promise of a written statement and a clearer picture of the situation. Emily hadn't involved her father in the affair or the potential fraud. That was something. It meant the circle of deception was smaller than it could have been. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Dinner running long. Don't wait up. Love you. I pulled over at a gas station and checked the location sharing on her phone, something she'd enabled years ago for safety, never thinking I'd use it to track her lies. The blue dot pulsed on the screen, not in the Pearl District where she'd claimed to be meeting her college friend. It was at Brandon's building. I sat in that gas station parking lot for 20 minutes, watching the blue dot pulse on my phone's screen. Emily's location hadn't moved. Brandon's building. Not the Pearl District restaurant where she'd claimed to be having dinner with a college friend. The lies had become so effortless for her that she didn't even bother to turn off location sharing anymore. I drove home, poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, and made a list of everything I needed to do in the morning. Call Patricia Lawson about the trust Emily had inquired about. Meet with Jeremy Walsh to review the final documentation. Arrange a meeting with Brandon to discuss dissolving our partnership. File the divorce papers. The bourbon tasted like ash, but I finished it anyway. Emily came home at 11:40, smelling like wine and wearing a smile that died the moment she saw me sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. "We need to talk," I said. The next 72 hours unfolded with the mechanical precision of a demolition. Jeremy Walsh filed the divorce papers on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Brandon had been served with dissolution paperwork for our business partnership. Tuesday, I met with Patricia Lawson and discovered that Emily had indeed inquired about setting up a trust, specifically asking about protecting assets from potential business liabilities. Wednesday, the forensic accountant I'd hired delivered his preliminary findings. Emily had been systematically copying our financial records for 18 months, though there was no evidence she'd shared them with anyone outside the company. The evidence was overwhelming. The IT logs, the security footage, the documented lies. Robert Whitmore's written statement confirming he'd received no advance information on the Whitmore Plaza bid. Text messages, timestamps, calendar correlations spanning 2 years. Emily's attorney tried to negotiate, offered to settle for 40% of marital assets, suggested mediation, proposed a structured payment plan. Jeremy Walsh responded with a counteroffer. Emily would receive exactly what she'd brought into the marriage 15 years ago, adjusted for inflation. Approximately $87,000. Everything else, the house, the business, the investments, had been built during our marriage, but her systematic deception and unauthorized access to company systems constituted grounds for an unequal division of assets. Brandon tried a different approach. He showed up at my office unannounced, wanting to talk things through like reasonable men. I had security escort him out. His attorney sent a letter claiming he was entitled to 50% of Mitchell & Porter Contracting's value. My attorney responded with documentation showing Brandon had violated his fiduciary duty as a partner, created conflicts of interest, and used company resources to facilitate an extramarital affair with another partner's wife. The letter suggested that if Brandon wanted to pursue his 50% claim, we'd be happy to countersue for damages. He dropped the claim within 48 hours. The inheritance from Uncle Raymond cleared probate on a Thursday in late May, 6 weeks after I'd discovered the affair. $42 million transferred into accounts Emily had no access to, no knowledge of, no claim against. By then, we'd been separated for a month. She was living in a condo her father had arranged, working with an attorney who kept trying to find leverage that didn't exist. The Riverside Commercial Complex deed transferred to my name on the same day. I gave Brandon 60 days' notice to vacate his condo. He moved out in 30, leaving no forwarding address. The business dissolution took 4 months to finalize. I bought out Brandon's share for $200,000, significantly less than the company was worth, but more than he deserved given the circumstances. Kyle Brennan became my new partner, with a 20% stake and a work ethic that reminded me why I'd gotten into construction in the first place. We renamed the company Porter and Brennan Contracting, removed every trace of Brandon Mitchell from our history. The divorce was final by September. Emily received her $87,000, her Lexus, and some furniture from our house. Everything else stayed with me. She tried to argue for spousal support, but the evidence of her systematic deception, the email access logs, the financial data exports, the 2 years of documented lies, made that argument impossible to sustain. Robert Whitmore called me the day the divorce was finalized. "I know this doesn't fix anything," he said, "but I want you to know I'm cutting Emily out of my will. What she did was unforgivable." "That's between you and her," I said. "But I appreciate you telling me." You're a good man, David. You deserved better than what my daughter gave you. Maybe I did. But deserving better and getting better were two different things. I sold the house in October. Too many memories in those walls. Too many ghosts in the rooms where Emily had planned her deceptions. Bought a smaller place in Northwest Portland, closer to the office with clean lines and no history. Started dating again in November, though nothing serious. Learned to trust my instincts instead of ignoring them. The inheritance sat in investment accounts, growing quietly while I worked on projects that mattered. I donated $2 million to a construction trades program at the community college, funding scholarships for students who couldn't afford traditional four-year degrees. Used another $1 million to start a nonprofit focused on affordable housing development. The rest I invested conservatively, building something that would last. Brandon moved to California, according to mutual acquaintances. Emily stayed in Portland, working as a bookkeeper for a property management company. We never spoke again after the final divorce hearing. Sometimes I'd see her father at industry events, and we'd exchange polite nods. But the relationship we'd built over 15 years was gone. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Kyle and I grew the business steadily, carefully. We hired good people, paid them well, built a reputation for quality work and honest dealing. The company Uncle Raymond had unknowingly saved became something I was proud of. Not because of its size or its profits, but because of how we ran it. With integrity, with transparency, with the kind of trust that had to be earned, not assumed. I learned things in those months after discovery. Learned that betrayal doesn't destroy you unless you let it. Learned that evidence and documentation matter more than emotion when everything falls apart. Learned that the person you think you know best can be a stranger wearing a familiar face. But mostly I learned this. Trust isn't about believing people will never hurt you. It's about building a life where you can survive if they do. It's about keeping your eyes open, your records clean, and your instincts sharp. It's about knowing the difference between partnership and performance, between love and the convincing imitation of it. Emily had been performing for 2 years, maybe longer, playing the role of devoted wife while systematically planning her exits and her alternatives. She'd been meticulous, careful, strategic. Her only mistake was assuming I'd never look closely enough to see the seams in her performance. The inheritance Uncle Raymond left me wasn't just money, it was options, freedom, the ability to walk away from a poisoned situation without losing everything I'd built. Without it, the divorce would have been different, messier, more painful, more compromising. I might have settled for less, accepted terms that hurt, stayed trapped in negotiations with a woman who'd spent 2 years treating our marriage like a convenient cover story. Instead, I walked away whole. Wounded, yes. Wiser, definitely. But not broken. On a cold morning in December, almost a year after I'd sat in my truck outside Brandon's building watching Emily's car in his parking spot, I stood in my new office looking at the city spread out below. Porter and Brennan Contracting occupied the top floor of a building we'd renovated ourselves, our logo etched in glass at the entrance, our reputation built on work that spoke for itself. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda, who'd stayed with the company through everything. Client meeting in 10 minutes. Conference room is ready. I pocketed the phone and headed down the hall, past offices where good people did honest work, past windows that looked out on a city full of buildings we'd helped create. The meeting was with a developer interested in a sustainable housing project, the kind of work that mattered beyond profit margins. This was the life I'd built from the wreckage. Not perfect, not unmarred, but mine. Built on truth instead of lies, on documentation instead of blind faith, on the hard-learned knowledge that some people will smile while they destroy you, and your only defense is staying alert enough to see it coming. Emily had taught me that lesson thoroughly. I'd paid tuition in heartbreak and betrayal, but I'd graduated with honors. The inheritance she'd thought she'd spend bought me something more valuable than luxury or comfort. It bought me the truth. And in the end, the truth was the only thing worth having. I walked into the conference room, shook hands with the client, and got to work building something real. The past was finished. The future was mine to construct. And this time, I knew exactly who I was building it with.